That's why I got 3 rules, I tell you. You can't kill me in a movie. I have to win my fights, and I get the girl at the end of the movie.
I stood there and would watch over and over this man, just because that image, I'm like, that's a badass dude.
I don't do funny because it's like Burt Reynolds. When Burt Reynolds came into the industry, he was an action star. Then he did comedy. Now what happens there, when he take out his gun, he point at somebody, you think a little flag gonna come out.
Fans say Fred Williamson wasn't just tough, he was dangerous. Behind the swagger, the fame, and the fists was a man Hollywood couldn't control. Whispers of fights, blacklisted projects, and quiet warnings followed him wherever he went because he was notable for blaxploitation films. To some, he was a hero. To others, a threat.
Fred Williamson is not a black actor. Fred Williamson is an actor. That created a lot of problems. So, but I didn't really care because is Eastwood a white actor?
This is the story of Fred the Hammer Williamson, the fearless, feared, and untamed force who took on Hollywood and never backed down.
AFL started in 1960, but they weren't that popular. Nobody was going for them. So I had a chance to play for the 49ers. So I got drafted by the 49ers.
Before Fred Williamson ever threw a punch on screen, he was already a legend of controlled violence. Born in Gary, Indiana in 1938, Fred came from tough steel mill roots, raised in a place where survival meant being stronger and smarter than everyone around you. In high school, he was already known as Hollywood Fred, not because of acting dreams, but because of the way he carried himself, confident, sharp-dressed, and unbothered by authority. That swagger carried him straight to Northwestern University, where he played college football with a mix of grace and brutality that made coaches nervous and fans excited.
Loved going in the middle because I was a 210 pounds, 220 pounds safety. And I loved going in there and hitting people. So I had a good rookie year.
By 1960, he made it to the NFL, signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers before moving to the Oakland Raiders, and later, the Kansas City Chiefs. But it was in Kansas City where his legend truly exploded. Fred wasn't just a cornerback, he was a statement. He named himself The Hammer, not because of ego, but because of how he used his right forearm like a weapon.
Okay, so you graduate college.
Yeah.
And did you know you're going to the NFL at that point? Or wait, was it the NFL? Because it was the NFL and the AFL.
The AFL hadn't existed yet. It was 1960, so
every hit ended the same way, with opponents dazed, helmets rattling, and Fred walking away cool, calm, and silent. Players and coaches started warning each other before games, watch for the hammer.
But you were my target, dude. If I was so tough on these guys that some of them came out and they would say, Hammer's going the other way. The player's going over there. I said, well, fine. If you stay right there, I'm not going to hit you.
His fearlessness wasn't just physical, it was psychological. Williamson would tell opponents exactly what he planned to do, and then he'd do it. During the 1967 Super Bowl, he told reporters he would knock out 2 Green Bay Packers wide receivers, and though the game didn't go his way, that level of confidence cemented his reputation as one of the most dangerous men in football. He wasn't just playing defense, he was playing mind games. Even off the field, Fred's attitude scared people. Teammates said he dressed like a movie star, spoke like a boss, and carried himself like a man who didn't fear rules. He knew his value, and he never let coaches forget it.
Players, so I could get some pass offense in. That's how I got the name Hammer, from coach saying, stop hammering my players.
By the time he retired from football in 1968, Fred Williamson had already become a cultural icon, the first black athlete to publicly brand himself as a one-man empire. He wasn't just leaving the game, he was stepping into a new world that needed someone dangerous, bold, and unapologetically powerful. Hollywood was waiting, and Fred Williamson was ready to show them what the Hammer could really do.
Fred wasn't just an actor, he was a powerhouse director and producer too.
When Fred Williamson walked into Hollywood, He didn't come to ask for permission. He came to take what he wanted. After retiring from football, Fred started out doing small acting gigs, appearing in TV shows like Julia and Star Trek. But even then, he wasn't playing soft characters. He played strong, commanding men who didn't flinch or follow orders. Hollywood wasn't ready for a black man who acted like that. At the time, most roles given to black actors were small, humble, or comedic. Fred didn't fit that mold. He refused to play anyone weak. In interviews, he said straight up that he'd rather walk away than play a character who didn't have control.
I get shoved and pushed around until I just say, okay, I can do this game.
Producers didn't know what to make of him. He was athletic, smart, and bold, but his attitude scared them. He wasn't the kind of actor you could tell what to do. He'd rewrite lines, change the blocking, and talk directly to directors if he didn't like how something looked. Then came the 1970s and the rise of blaxploitation films. Movies like Shaft and Superfly were exploding, and studios realized they could make money by putting strong, confident black men on screen. Fred saw an opening and ran with it. In 1973, he starred in Black Caesar, a film about a Harlem gangster who rises to power. It was loud, violent, and raw, just like Fred. The movie became a hit and made him one of the biggest black stars in America.
I paid the cost of being born.
Fred followed that up with Hell Up in Harlem and Three the Hard Way. Each role was tougher than the last, filled with gunfights, standoffs, and one-liners that turned him into a symbol of cool power. But what made Fred different wasn't just his acting, it was his control. He owned his production company, wrote parts of his scripts, and handled his image himself. Nobody told Fred Williamson how to look or how to act. In one interview, he said, "I don't play the guy that dies. I don't play the guy that loses the girl, and I don't play the guy that gets slapped." That wasn't arrogance, it was a rule. He made sure his characters always walked out strong.
Does not destroy my image or my character.
Have you had that? Have you turned down roles where...
Every day.
But his strong attitude came with consequences. Directors called him difficult, and some actors refused to work with him. Behind the scenes, he was labeled dangerous, not because of violence, but because of how much control he had. Fred Williamson wasn't playing by Hollywood's rules, he was making his own. Even so, his films started to travel beyond America. Europe and Africa embraced him as a real hero, not a stereotype. Fans loved that he looked like he could win every fight, and he usually did. By the late 1970s, Fred had become one of the highest-paid independent actors in the business. But with fame came problems, and soon, the same fear that made him powerful would start turning against him. Hollywood was changing fast, and Fred Williamson's toughness was about to be tested in ways he never expected.
Alles, was du denen sagen willst, sagst du mir zuerst.
By the early 1980s, Fred Williamson had become a big name in black cinema. But the higher he climbed, the more resistance he faced. Hollywood didn't like how outspoken he was, especially about the way black actors were treated. Fred was tired of how studios handled black stories. He said Hollywood was making blaxploitation films to make fun of black culture, not to celebrate it. He said, "They created that label to laugh at us." For him, those movies were serious, a way to show power, control, and pride.
I don't do funny because it's like Burt Reynolds. When Burt Reynolds came into the industry, he was an action star, and then he did comedy. Now what happened?
He wanted to move past the label, but the industry didn't let him. When he started trying to make his own films, most studios refused to give him funding. He said he'd walk into meetings and see doors close before he even sat down. That's when he took matters into his own hands. He started his own company, Po' Boy Productions. He decided to produce, write, and direct his own movies. It was a bold move at the time, especially for a black filmmaker. But Fred didn't care. He was used to doing things his way. In his own words, "If they won't let me in their house, I'll build my own." And he did. He started filming outside the US, mainly in Europe. Italy loved him. He became a major action star there, shooting movies like Mr. Mean, The Inglourious Bastards, and Mean Johnny Barrows. These weren't small projects either. They were international hits that gave him full creative control. But independence came with heavy costs. Fred faced legal and financial troubles in Italy. The tax authorities there went after his company, and his production started running out of money. He said in an interview that he had half the money for a film and still went ahead because he believed in it. Fred was frustrated. He said, "You would think it would be easy for me to get $1 million with my name, but it's not." Despite his fame, Hollywood wasn't giving him a seat at the table. And when he did get back to the US, things didn't get easier. He tried working in television again, even landing a brief job as a commentator on Monday Night Football. But that gig ended before the season even began. Nobody gave a clear reason. Fred just packed up and moved on.
But I already knew that lifestyle. So I wanted to go somewhere where I had something to learn.
Some people said he was too raw, too unfiltered for network TV. Others believed producers were uncomfortable with how much presence he brought. Whatever the case, it added another chapter to his long list of clashes with the system. But even when Hollywood turned its back, Fred never backed down. He was still making movies, still acting, and still demanding respect. For him, it wasn't just about being in front of the camera. It was about showing that a black man could own the camera, direct the story, and decide the ending. He once said, "I don't take orders, I give them." And that was true both on screen and off. By this point, Fred Williamson had gone from being a feared athlete to a feared actor, and now a feared businessman. But the same boldness that made him successful also made him a target. In the years to come, his discipline and temper on set would stir up even more stories, and some of them would shock people who thought they already knew the Hammer. Fred's battle with Hollywood wasn't over. It was just entering a new, more personal round. Fred Williamson wasn't just tough on screen. He carried that same fire behind the camera. Everyone on his set knew one rule: don't cross Fred. He ran his sets like a football team. Everyone had a role, and no one slacked off.
Longevity, man, is something that you have to nurture. Be careful about it, because it can go away quick.
One of the wildest stories came from a shoot with actor Gary Busey. When Busey started disrupting the set, Fred didn't argue. He said he grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the wall. To Fred, that wasn't anger. That was control. Respect had to be earned. That story spread fast. Some called it violence. Others said it was leadership. Fred didn't care. To him, order was business. He once said, "If I'm putting my name on something, it better be right." Crew members compared his sets to boot camp. He pushed everyone hard, yelled if he had to, but always demanded excellence. As long as people respected his process, he was fair. He wasn't a tyrant, just no nonsense. Still, that strict style fed his dangerous image. Fans saw his calm but deadly interviews and believed he was exactly like his movie characters. He didn't mind that. It kept people in line. But Hollywood didn't always like it. Some directors feared he'd take over the set. Studios labeled him difficult, unsure how to handle a man who wouldn't bow. Yet old-school filmmakers respected him. They knew Fred got results. He could manage chaos, direct complex stunts, and deliver without excuses. He wasn't a Hollywood puppet, and that made him dangerous to the system. Fred once joked, "They don't hire me to be nice. They hire me because I get things done." Behind the headlines, that was the truth. Fred wasn't trying to be feared. He was protecting his legacy. One bad movie could erase years of work, and he refused to let that happen.
You know, that's why I got 3 rules, I tell you. You can't kill me in a movie. I have to win my fights, and I get the girl at the end of the movie.
So when people said he was dangerous, they weren't just talking about fights. They meant his attitude, his refusal to compromise in an industry built on control. He built his own kind of order, and if that meant being called the Hammer off-screen too, so be it. Fred's strict code made him both respected and feared. But his blunt honesty about Hollywood, other actors, and black cinema would soon spark new controversy. Fred Williamson never sugarcoated anything. If something bothered him, he said it. That honesty made him stand out and made him controversial. In a 2016 interview, he called out fellow actor Richard Roundtree, the man behind Shaft. Fred said Roundtree messed up when he left tough guy roles for softer ones.
Roundtree is typical family kind of guy who just trying to be accepted for what he does, trying to make his way into the business. He's not looking for a huge share.
It sounded harsh, but Fred's point was deeper. Hollywood gives black actors limited lanes. If you don't protect your image, they take everything back. Still, the comment caused tension. He wasn't afraid to say what others wouldn't. He also criticized modern black cinema, especially Tyler Perry. Fred said Perry's movies were taking us backwards 50 years. It was brutal honesty, but that was Fred. He believed black films should project strength, not stereotypes. When asked if he regretted those words, he said calmly, "I said what I said."
Nothing is, there's so much crap being made now, man. And especially with black actors and blacks in the film, it's just terrible stuff.
Hollywood didn't like that attitude. Some producers quietly distanced themselves. Others said he was too opinionated. Fred didn't care. The truth came before comfort. He was also open about money struggles. Even with fame, funding was hard. He once said, "I got half the money. I'm making the movie for $1.2 million. You'd think it'd be easy to get the rest with this cast." Fred felt Hollywood didn't support black filmmakers equally. He'd proven himself as actor, writer, and producer, yet investors stayed hesitant. His strong personality scared some off, but he wouldn't change. That independence followed him abroad. In Italy and Belgium, his company, Po' Boy Productions, faced tax issues and delays, but he kept filming.
He was making his own movies in Italy like long time ago when so many everything. So historically, you know, the blaxploitation era saved Hollywood, right?
In Belgium, directors didn't want fight scenes. They thought they were unnecessary. Fred told them, "If there's no action, there's no me." He was right. Fans came for the attitude, not subtlety. But even abroad, he faced politics. His bluntness made people nervous. In a world of careful PR talk, Fred was too real, and that made him politically dangerous. He once said, "I'm not going to let the system tell me who to be." The media twisted his quotes, painting him as arrogant or hostile. Fred didn't care. He cared about respect. Every word reminded people that the Hammer didn't pull punches. His mouth got him into more trouble than his fists ever did, but it also kept his name alive. Fred Williamson didn't just play the Hammer. He was the Hammer. In every interview, every argument, every movie. Fred Williamson's legacy isn't just about fame or action, it's about rebellion. He fought Hollywood his own way and never backed down. When he left the NFL for acting, few believed in him. Hollywood didn't want strong black leads, only sidekicks and stereotypes. Fred refused. He said, "If I don't get the girl and I don't win the fight, I'm not doing the movie."
You know, that's why I got 3 rules, I tell you. You can't kill me in a movie. I have to win my fights, and I get the girl at the end of the movie.
That became his personal rule. He played heroes who were smart, bold, and in control. Critics called it blaxploitation. Fred turned it into empowerment. He built his own company, wrote his own stories, and hired black talent when studios wouldn't. He once laughed, "They thought they were using me, but I was using them." By the late 70s, Fred was directing and producing hits like Mr. Mean, Mean Johnny Barrows, and One Down, Two to Go. Each movie proved he didn't need Hollywood's blessing to win, but independence came with challenges. Financing was tough. Distributors hesitated. Still, Fred kept shooting, sometimes overseas, sometimes with his own money.
We were making money, more money than the whites were making. My films were across the street with drawing crowds, 3 to Hallway, like Caesar was drawing crowds over across the street. Other films weren't.
Even when Italian tax troubles hit his company hard, he didn't stop. To him, failure meant quitting. He said, "You only fail when you stop swinging." Fans didn't care about critics. They loved his authenticity, the smirk, the attitude, the confidence. He wasn't acting, he was the role. Even in his 80s, Fred stayed defiant. He still wore his Super Bowl ring and said, "I never took it off. That's my reminder I earned everything." Hollywood never fully honored him. No big tributes, few awards. But his influence lived on in every strong black action star who followed Wesley Snipes, Samuel L. Jackson, Michael Jai White. Each carried a piece of Fred's fire. He wasn't polished, but he was real, and that's what made him timeless. Through every era, Fred stayed the same. Football player, fighter, director, rebel. He said in a 2025 interview, "I built a name they can't erase." He showed that being dangerous wasn't about throwing punches, it was about refusing to bow to the system. That's why fans still talk about him with both fear and respect. Fred The Hammer Williamson wasn't dangerous because of his strength. He was dangerous because he spoke the truth. His story isn't about chaos, it's about control, about building a legacy his way and standing firm when Hollywood tried to tame him. Fred Williamson may have slowed down, but his voice, presence, and power still hit hard. Like his nickname, The Hammer. Every time his story is told, it lands with force,